If you would permit me this moment, I want to share something with you that has weighed upon my spirit for many years. Something I have observed in the quiet chambers of prayer, in the grand cathedrals, in the humble gatherings, and in the secret places where souls meet the divine. I have walked alongside thousands of seekers, believers, doubters, and mystics. I have read the patterns of their hearts, traced the symbols of their faith, and witnessed the paradoxes that live within the sacred spaces we create. And what I am about to reveal to you may reorganize everything you thought you understood about worship, about music, about the very songs that rise from your lips on Sunday morning. You see, if you have ever felt a strange discomfort while singing certain hymns, if you have ever sensed a shadow beneath the beauty of a melody, if you have ever wondered why some songs feel like they carry a weight that does not match their words, then this message is for you. This is not coincidence. You were meant to hear this today, because in the next hour and a half, you will understand a mystery that has been hidden in plain sight for centuries, a mystery that lives in the intersection between the sacred and the profane, between light and shadow, between what we proclaim and what we unknowingly invoke. Here is what I want you to grasp. There are songs, beloved hymns, melodies that have been sung by millions of faithful hearts that were not born in the light. They were not conceived in moments of divine inspiration. They were written, composed, and crafted by hands that served a different master. And yet, we sing them. We teach them to our children. We lift them up as offerings to God. This is not a condemnation. This is not about fear. This is about awareness. This is about understanding that music is a vessel, and vessels can carry many things. Now, before you close your heart to what I am saying, before you dismiss this as conspiracy or spiritual paranoia, I ask you to stay with me, because what I am about to share is not rooted in judgment, but in observation. It is rooted in the ancient wisdom that knows music is one of the most powerful forces in the universe. Music bypasses the mind and speaks directly to the soul. It can heal, it can transform, it can elevate, but it can also manipulate, it can bind, it can seduce. Let me open a door for you. Imagine a lake. On the surface, it is calm, beautiful, reflecting the sky. But beneath, there are currents, there are depths, there are creatures that move unseen. This is the nature of music. What we hear on the surface is melody, harmony, lyrics, but beneath there are intentions, there are frequencies, there are spiritual imprints, and not all of them are aligned with the divine. I have spent decades studying the origins of sacred music, tracing the lineages of hymns, uncovering the stories behind the songs that shape our worship. And what I have discovered is both fascinating and unsettling. There are compositions that were written by individuals who were openly involved in occult practices, in secret societies, in traditions that worshipped forces contrary to the Christ light. And yet, their music found its way into the church. It was adopted, adapted, and sanctified by association. How does this happen? How does the profane become sacred? It happens through a process of spiritual amnesia. We forget the origins. We focus on the present utility. We say, "But the words are beautiful. The melody uplifts us. It brings people closer to God. And perhaps it does. But at what cost? What invisible threads are we pulling when we sing songs that were conceived in darkness? Now I want you to understand something crucial. I am not saying that every hymn with a complex history is inherently evil. I am not saying that God cannot redeem what was once corrupted. What I am saying is that we must be conscious. We must be discerning. We must ask questions. We must feel into the energy of what we are singing, not just recite words by rote. Let me give you an example, one that may surprise you. There are hymns in common use today whose melodies were taken from drinking songs, from tavern ballads, from secular compositions that celebrated earthly pleasures. The Church Fathers, in their desire to make worship accessible and appealing, borrowed these tunes and set sacred words to them. On the surface, this seems harmless, even clever, but energetically, what are we doing? We are layering the sacred over the profane without fully transmuting the original vibration. And then there are the more troubling cases. Composers who were known members of Freemasonry, of Rosicrucian orders, of esoteric circles that practice rituals invoking entities that are not of the light. These individuals created music that was, by their own admission, designed to carry specific frequencies, to open certain doorways in the consciousness of the listener. And some of this music made its way into hymnals, into liturgies, into the very fabric of Christian worship. I want to pause here and invite you to do something. If this resonates with you, if you feel a stirring in your spirit, I want you to subscribe to this channel, not because I need your validation, but because what we are discussing here is not spoken of in most churches. It is not taught in most seminaries. This is the kind of knowledge that gets buried, dismissed, or ridiculed. But it is vital. It is essential for anyone who wants to walk a path of true spiritual integrity. And at the end of this message, I am going to ask you a question, a very specific question, and I want you to share your answer in the comments, because your experience matters, your discernment matters, and there are others who need to hear what you have witnessed. Now, let us go deeper. Let us descend into the mystery. Music, as I said, is a vessel, but it is also a language. It is a language that speaks to the subconscious, to the emotional body, to the spiritual centers within us. Every note, every interval, every harmonic structure carries information. This is not mystical speculation. This is acoustic science. This is vibrational reality. Different frequencies affect us in different ways. Some frequencies promote healing, coherence, peace. Others promote dissonance, agitation, confusion. In ancient traditions, this was well understood. The Pythagoreans studied the mathematics of music and its relationship to the cosmos. The Egyptians used sound in their temples to induce altered states of consciousness. The Hebrews had specific modes and scales for worship, for mourning, for celebration. Music was never neutral. It was always intentional. But somewhere along the way, we lost this understanding. We began to treat music as mere entertainment, as background noise, as a tool for emotional manipulation in marketing and media. And the church, in many ways, followed this trend. We stopped asking, what is this music doing to us spiritually? And started asking, does this music attract people? Does it make them feel good? Feeling good is not the same as being aligned with truth. Feeling uplifted is not the same as being connected to the divine. There are many things that can make us feel good temporarily that are ultimately harmful. Sugar, alcohol, flattery, and yes, certain kinds of music. So when we sing a hymn that was written by someone who was consciously channeling energies that are not of God, what are we doing? We are opening ourselves to those energies. We are inviting them into our consciousness, into our worship space, into our spiritual field. And this is not theoretical. I have witnessed it. I have seen people become spiritually oppressed, emotionally disturbed, mentally confused, not because of overt sin, but because of subtle exposures to frequencies and intentions that were not aligned with their highest good. Let me tell you a story. There was a woman who came to me many years ago. She was a devout Christian, a worship leader in her church. She loved music, lived for music. But she began to experience strange disturbances, nightmares, a sense of heaviness during worship, a feeling that something was watching her when she sang certain songs. She could not understand it. She prayed, she fasted, she sought deliverance, but the disturbances continued. When I sat with her, when I entered into the quiet space of listening, I began to see images. I saw her standing in a church, singing a particular hymn, and around her I saw shadows, not demonic in the traditional sense, but energetic imprints, residues of intentions that had been woven into the music itself. I asked her about the hymn. She told me it was one of her favorites, a classic beloved by many. I researched its origins. The composer was a known occultist, a member of a secret society that practiced rituals invoking ancient deities. I shared this with her gently, without judgment, and I suggested that she stop singing that hymn, at least for a season, and observe what happened. She was resistant at first. "But the words are so beautiful," she said. "They speak of God's love, of redemption." I understood her hesitation, but I encouraged her to trust the process. She stopped singing the hymn, and within weeks the disturbances ceased, the nightmares ended, the heaviness lifted. She felt free again. This was not placebo. This was not psychological projection. This was the result of removing a spiritual contaminant from her practice. Now, I am not saying that everyone who sings that hymn will have the same experience. We are all different. We have different sensitivities, different spiritual protections, different levels of discernment. But the principle remains. Music carries energy, and energy has consequences. Let me ask you something, and I want you to really sit with this question. Have you ever felt uncomfortable singing a particular song in church? Have you ever felt a resistance, a hesitation, a sense that something was off? If so, do not dismiss that feeling. That is your spirit speaking to you. That is your inner discernment alerting you to a misalignment. Honor it, investigate it. Ask God to show you the truth. And here is another layer to this mystery. It is not just about the origins of the music. It is also about the intentions of those who lead worship. If a worship leader is singing from a place of ego, of performance, of seeking validation, then even the most sacred song becomes corrupted, because music amplifies intention. It magnifies whatever is in the heart of the one who creates it or performs it. This is why, in ancient times, only those who had undergone rigorous spiritual training were allowed to lead worship. Only those who had purified their hearts, who had aligned their will with the divine, who had learned to channel sacred energy without distortion. It was not a casual role. It was a sacred office. But today, we have lost this understanding. We choose worship leaders based on talent, on charisma, on popularity. We do not ask, what is the state of their soul? What are they carrying spiritually? What intentions are they bringing into this sacred space? And so we end up with worship that is more about entertainment than transformation, more about emotion than elevation. I want to be clear. I am not against emotion in worship. Emotion is a beautiful, necessary part of the human experience. But emotion must be guided by truth. It must be rooted in discernment. It must be aligned with the divine will. Otherwise, it becomes sentimentality, manipulation, spiritual intoxication. There is a difference between being moved by the Spirit and being moved by a clever arrangement of chords and lyrics designed to trigger an emotional response. The former leads to lasting transformation. The latter leads to temporary highs, followed by spiritual emptiness. And this is where the devil's cunning comes into play. The devil does not need to destroy the church from the outside. He can infiltrate it from within. He can use the very tools of worship, the very songs we sing, to subtly shift our focus, to dilute our discernment, to make us comfortable with compromise. Think about it. If you were an adversary of the light, would you not want to corrupt the music? Would you not want to insert your frequencies, your intentions, your symbols into the songs that millions of people sing every week? Would you not want to create a Trojan horse, something that looks beautiful and holy on the outside, but carries a hidden payload? This is not paranoia. This is strategy, and it has been employed for centuries. The infiltration of sacred music is one of the oldest and most effective tactics of spiritual warfare. Because music bypasses the rational mind. It goes straight to the heart, to the subconscious, to the spiritual centers. And once it is there, it begins to shape our beliefs, our emotions, our very sense of reality. Now, some of you may be thinking, but I have been singing these hymns my whole life, and I have not experienced any negative effects. And that may be true. As I said, we all have different sensitivities, but I would invite you to consider this. Just because you have not noticed the effects does not mean they are not there. Just because you have not felt oppressed does not mean you have not been influenced. Influence is often subtle. It is a slow erosion, a gradual shift, a quiet compromise. You do not wake up one day and realize you have been deceived. You wake up one day and realize you no longer feel the fire you once felt. You no longer have the clarity you once had. You no longer sense the presence of God the way you used to. And you wonder what happened. You wonder where the passion went. What happened is that you allowed things into your spiritual space that did not belong there. You sang songs that carried frequencies of confusion, of distraction, of spiritual lethargy, and over time, those frequencies accumulated, creating a fog, a veil, a barrier between you and the divine. But here is the good news. Awareness is the first step to freedom. Once you see the pattern, once you understand the mechanism, you can begin to make different choices. You can begin to curate your spiritual diet with the same care you would curate your physical diet. You can begin to ask, what am I feeding my soul? What am I allowing into my consciousness? What music am I singing? And what is it doing to me? And this brings me to a very practical question. How do we discern? How do we know which songs are safe and which are not? How do we navigate this complex landscape without becoming paranoid or legalistic? The answer is not in creating a list of forbidden hymns. The answer is in developing your own discernment. It is in learning to feel into the energy of a song, to sense its spiritual signature, to ask the Holy Spirit for guidance. Here are some questions you can ask yourself when evaluating a song. First, what is the origin of this music? Who wrote it? What was their spiritual background? What were their intentions? This information is often available with a little research, and while it is not the final word, it is a valuable piece of the puzzle. Second, how does this song make me feel? Not just emotionally, but spiritually. Do I feel closer to God when I sing it? Do I feel peace, clarity, joy? Or do I feel agitated, confused, heavy? Trust your inner witness. Your spirit knows the difference between light and shadow. Third, what are the lyrics actually saying? Are they biblically sound? Are they theologically accurate? Or are they vague, sentimental, or subtly heretical? Words matter, and just because something sounds poetic does not mean it is true. Fourth, what is the overall effect of this song on my spiritual life? Does it draw me into deeper intimacy with God? Does it inspire me to live more righteously? Or does it leave me feeling empty, distracted, or self-focused? These are not legalistic rules. These are tools for discernment. And the more you practice using them, the sharper your discernment will become. Now I want to address something that may be stirring in some of your hearts. You may be feeling anger, resistance, defensiveness. You may be thinking, this is too much. This is taking things too far. Music is just music. And I understand that reaction. It is uncomfortable to have our assumptions challenged. It is unsettling to realize that something we have trusted may not be trustworthy. But I would invite you to sit with that discomfort. Do not run from it. Do not dismiss it. Ask yourself, Why am I so resistant to this idea? What am I afraid of losing? Often, our resistance is a sign that we are touching something important, something that needs to be examined. And here is what I have learned in my many years of spiritual work. The truth is not afraid of questions. The truth welcomes investigation. It is only lies and illusions that require us to stop asking, to stop looking, to stop discerning. So if what I am saying is true, then it will stand up to scrutiny, and if it is not true, then your investigation will reveal that. But either way, you will have grown. You will have exercised your discernment. You will have taken responsibility for your spiritual life, instead of passively accepting what you have been given. And this, my friends, is the heart of the matter. This is not ultimately about music. This is about spiritual maturity. This is about moving from a place of blind faith to a place of conscious faith. This is about becoming a discerning steward of your own soul. God does not want robots. God does not want people who mindlessly follow traditions without understanding why. God wants partners, co-creators, individuals who are awake, aware, and actively engaged in the journey of transformation. And part of that journey is learning to recognize the difference between what is truly sacred and what is merely labeled as sacred. It is learning to distinguish between the voice of the Spirit and the voice of the ego. It is learning to sense the subtle energies that move through music, through words, through symbols, and to choose wisely what you allow into your inner temple. Because your body, your mind, your spirit, these are temples. They are sacred spaces. And just as you would not allow garbage to pile up in a physical temple, you should not allow spiritual garbage to accumulate in your inner temple. Now let me share with you another dimension of this mystery. It is not just about individual songs. It is about the entire culture of worship that has developed in many churches. A culture that prioritizes performance over presence, entertainment over encounter, emotional highs over spiritual depth. I have been in churches where the music is so loud, so overwhelming, that it is impossible to hear the still, small voice of God. I have been in churches where the lights, the smoke machines, the choreography, all create a sensory overload that mimics spiritual experience, but is actually just manufactured emotion. And the people leave feeling high, feeling moved, feeling like they have encountered God. But what they have actually encountered is a well-orchestrated production designed to trigger certain neurological and emotional responses. And when the high wears off, they are left empty, craving the next fix, the next service, the next emotional rush. This is not worship. This is spiritual addiction, and it is rampant in the modern church. True worship is not about what we feel. True worship is about alignment. It is about bringing our will, our heart, our mind, our body into harmony with the divine will. It is about surrender, about humility, about silence as much as sound. And true worship music reflects this. It creates space. It invites contemplation. It does not manipulate. It does not coerce. It gently guides the soul into the presence of the sacred. But this kind of music is rare in many contemporary settings because it does not sell. It does not attract crowds. It does not create the kind of excitement that keeps people coming back week after week. And so, we have traded the sacred for the spectacular. We have traded depth for breadth. We have traded transformation for entertainment. And the devil laughs. Because he does not need to destroy the church. He just needs to distract it. He just needs to keep it busy with things that look spiritual, but are ultimately empty. Now, I want to offer you a vision of what worship could be if we reclaimed the sacred, if we returned to discernment, if we chose music that truly serves the light. Imagine a worship service where every song has been carefully chosen, not for its popularity, but for its spiritual integrity, where the musicians are not performers, but priests, individuals who have prepared their hearts, who have purified their intentions, who are consciously channeling divine energy. Imagine a space where the music is not loud and overwhelming, but gentle and inviting, where there is room for silence, for stillness, for the whisper of the Spirit, where the focus is not on the stage, but on the altar, not on the musicians, but on the presence of God. Imagine leaving such a service not with an emotional high, but with a deep sense of peace, of clarity, of alignment. Imagine carrying that peace with you throughout the week, not as a memory, but as a living reality. This is possible. This is what worship was always meant to be. And it is what worship can be again if we are willing to make different choices. But it requires courage. It requires a willingness to go against the current, to question the status quo, to risk being misunderstood or criticized. It requires you to say, I will not sing songs that do not resonate with my spirit, even if everyone else is singing them. I will not participate in worship that feels more like a concert than a sacred encounter. I will honor the temple of my being by being discerning about what I allow into it. And when you make this choice, you will find that you are not alone. There are others who have been feeling the same discomfort, the same longing for something deeper, something truer. And together, you can begin to create spaces of authentic worship, spaces where the sacred is truly honored. Now, let me address a question that may be arising. What about grace? What about the fact that God can use anything, even imperfect things, for His purposes? And this is a valid question. God is sovereign. God can and does redeem what is broken. God can take a song written in darkness and use it to bring light. But this does not mean we should be careless. This does not mean we should knowingly expose ourselves to spiritual contaminants and expect God to protect us from the consequences. Grace is not a license for foolishness. Discernment is not legalism. It is wisdom. And wisdom says, choose carefully. Be intentional. Do not assume that just because something is popular or traditional, it is safe. Test everything. Hold fast to what is good. This is biblical. This is what we are called to do, Not to live in fear, but to live in awareness. Not to be paranoid, but to be prudent. And when we do this, when we exercise discernment, we create a foundation of spiritual integrity that can withstand the storms of life. We build our house on rock, not on sand. So let me bring this full circle. The devil wrote it, Christians sing it. This is not just about music. This is about the broader principle of infiltration, of compromise, of the slow erosion of spiritual integrity. It is about how the enemy works, not with overt attacks, but with subtle seductions. Not by destroying what is sacred, but by corrupting it, by mixing it with just enough poison that it becomes toxic over time. And the antidote is not fear. The antidote is awareness. It is discernment. It is a commitment to truth, even when truth is uncomfortable. It is a willingness to examine everything, to question everything, to hold everything up to the light of the Spirit and ask, does this serve my highest good? Does this align with divine truth? Does this draw me closer to God? And when the answer is no, to have the courage to let it go, to release it, to choose something better. This is the path of the spiritual warrior, not the warrior who fights external enemies, but the warrior who fights the internal battle for clarity, for purity, for alignment. And this battle is won not with swords, but with choices. Small choices, daily choices, moment-by-moment choices to honor the sacred, to protect the temple, to walk in truth. Let me take you deeper still into this mystery, because there are layers upon layers that we must explore together. I want to speak to you about the historical patterns, the specific examples, the mechanisms by which this infiltration has occurred. Because knowledge is power, and understanding is the foundation of wise action. Throughout church history, there have been pivotal moments when the sacred and the profane intersected in the realm of music. During the Reformation, Martin Luther famously said, "Why should the devil have all the good music?" And so he took popular melodies, tavern songs, folk tunes, and set sacred words to them. His intention was noble. He wanted to make worship accessible to the common people, to give them songs they could sing, melodies they already knew. But what he may not have fully understood was the principle of energetic imprinting. When a melody is created in a particular context, for a particular purpose, it carries the energy of that context. A drinking song carries the energy of intoxication, of revelry, of earthly pleasure. And while new words can redirect the conscious mind, the subconscious still responds to the original imprint. This is not to condemn Luther or his intentions. This is simply to illuminate a principle that has been at work for centuries. And it is a principle that continues to this day. In the 18th and 19th centuries, many hymn composers were involved in Freemasonry. This is historical fact, not conspiracy theory. Freemasonry, at its core, is a spiritual system that draws from multiple traditions, including Kabbalah, Hermeticism, and ancient mystery schools. It is not inherently Christian, though many Christians have been members. These composers created beautiful music, music that is technically sophisticated, harmonically rich, emotionally moving. And much of this music made its way into Christian hymnals. Churches sang it, loved it, made it part of their tradition. And few people asked about the spiritual background of the composers, about the intentions behind the music, about what energies might be woven into the notes. Now, I want to be very clear about something. I am not saying that Freemasonry is evil, or that everyone involved in it is serving darkness. Spiritual systems are complex, and people's intentions vary widely. What I am saying is that when music is created by someone who is actively involved in esoteric practices, that music may carry frequencies and intentions that are not aligned with pure Christian worship. And this is where discernment becomes crucial. We must learn to feel beyond the surface beauty, beyond the emotional impact, beyond the tradition. We must learn to sense the spiritual signature of what we are singing. Let me give you another example, one that is more contemporary. In the modern worship movement, there has been an explosion of new songs, new styles, new approaches to worship music, and much of this has been beautiful and spirit-led, but not all of it. There are worship leaders and songwriters who have openly spoken about their struggles with sin, with addiction, with spiritual darkness, and yet their songs are sung in churches around the world. Now, does God redeem broken people? Absolutely. Can God use imperfect vessels? Without question. But we must also ask, what was the spiritual state of the person when they wrote this song? What were they channeling? What energies were they tapping into? I have heard worship songs that were written during periods of deep spiritual crisis, of moral compromise, of emotional manipulation. And those songs carry that energy. They may have beautiful words, catchy melodies, powerful arrangements, but underneath there is a current of confusion, of pain, of unresolved shadow. And when we sing those songs, we are not just singing words. We are opening ourselves to the energetic field that was present when the song was created. We are inviting that field into our consciousness, into our worship space, into our spiritual body. This is why the ancient wisdom traditions were so careful about who was allowed to create sacred music, who was allowed to lead worship, who was allowed to stand in the role of spiritual mediator, because they understood that music is a portal, and portals can open to many different realms. Now, let me speak to you about frequency. This is a topic that modern science is just beginning to understand, but ancient mystics have known for millennia. Everything in the universe vibrates at a specific frequency. Your body, your thoughts, your emotions, your spirit, all are vibrating at particular frequencies. And music, being organized sound, is one of the most powerful tools for shifting frequency. Certain frequencies promote healing, coherence, harmony. The frequency of 528 Hertz, for example, is known as the love frequency and is associated with DNA repair and transformation. The frequency of 432 Hz is said to be in harmony with the natural vibration of the universe. But there are also frequencies that promote dissonance, chaos, confusion, and these frequencies can be deliberately embedded in music, either consciously or unconsciously by the composer. In the occult traditions, there is a deep understanding of how sound can be used to invoke specific entities, to open specific doorways, to create specific effects in consciousness. Certain intervals, certain chord progressions, certain rhythmic patterns are known to have particular spiritual effects. And some of these patterns have made their way into worship music. Not always intentionally, but through the influence of composers who were trained in these traditions, who understood these principles, who may have been using them without the church's awareness. The tritone, for example, also known as the devil's interval, was banned by the medieval church because it was believed to summon demonic forces. It is a dissonant interval that creates a sense of unease, of tension, of spiritual disturbance. And yet, you can find this interval in modern worship music, used for dramatic effect, for emotional impact, without any awareness of its historical and spiritual significance. Now, I am not suggesting that every use of a tritone is demonic. Music theory is complex, and intervals can be used in many different ways. What I am suggesting is that we need to be aware, to be conscious, to understand that music is not neutral. It carries power, and power can be used for many purposes. Let me share with you another story, one that illustrates this principle in a profound way. There was a church I visited many years ago, a large, thriving congregation with a powerful worship ministry. The music was excellent, the musicians were talented, the production was professional. And yet, I felt a disturbance. During the worship service, as the music swelled and the people sang with passion, I began to see something in the spiritual realm. I saw entities, shadowy forms, moving through the congregation. They were not attacking people overtly, but they were feeding on the emotional energy, on the spiritual openness, on the vulnerability that worship creates. I was troubled by this vision, and I sought the Lord for understanding. And what I came to understand was that the worship leader, though sincere and talented, was carrying unresolved trauma, unhealed wounds, unconfessed sin. And through the music, through the act of leading worship, these unresolved energies were being transmitted to the congregation. The music itself was not evil. The words were biblically sound, but the vessel was compromised, and that compromise created an opening for spiritual interference. I shared this with the pastor gently and with great care, and to his credit, he listened. He began to work with the worship leader to help him address the unresolved issues, to create space for healing and restoration. And over time, the spiritual atmosphere of the worship services shifted. The disturbance lifted. The presence of God became more tangible, more pure. This is the power of discernment. This is the importance of spiritual integrity in worship leadership. It is not about perfection. It is about awareness, about honesty, about a willingness to address what is hidden, what is unresolved, what is compromising the purity of the spiritual transmission. And this brings me to a crucial point. The solution to this problem is not to stop worshiping. The solution is not to become fearful or paranoid about music. The solution is to become more conscious, more discerning, more intentional about what we sing and how we worship. We need to ask questions. We need to do research. We need to feel into the energy of the music we are using. We need to pray for discernment, to ask the Holy Spirit to guide us, to show us what is aligned with truth and what is not. And we need to be willing to make difficult choices, to stop singing songs that do not resonate with our spirit, even if they are popular, to leave worship services that feel more like entertainment than sacred encounter, to create new spaces, new expressions of worship that honor the sacred, that protect the purity of the spiritual transmission. This is not easy. It requires courage. It requires a willingness to stand alone, to go against the current, to risk being misunderstood or criticized. But it is necessary because the stakes are high. The spiritual integrity of the church is at stake. The spiritual health of individuals is at stake. The very presence of God in our midst is at stake. Now let me speak to you about the power of intentional sacred music. Because this is not just about what to avoid, this is also about what to embrace, what to create, what to cultivate. Throughout history, there have been composers and musicians who have created music from a place of deep spiritual purity, of divine inspiration, of conscious alignment with the sacred. Johann Sebastian Bach is one of the most famous examples. He signed many of his compositions with the letters SDG, which stands for Soli Deo Gloria. To God alone be the glory. Bach understood that music was a form of prayer, a form of worship, a form of divine service. He approached composition with reverence, with humility, with a deep sense of spiritual responsibility. And his music reflects this. It carries a frequency of order, of beauty, of transcendence. It elevates the soul. It clarifies the mind. It opens the heart to the divine. This is the kind of music we need more of in the church. Music that is created from a place of spiritual integrity, of conscious devotion, of pure intention. Music that serves the light, that honors the sacred, that facilitates genuine encounter with the divine. And this music does not have to be complex or sophisticated. Some of the most powerful sacred music is simple, humble, unadorned. Gregorian chant, for example, is one of the purest forms of worship music ever created. It is monophonic, meaning it has only one melodic line. It is sung in unison, without harmony or accompaniment. It is designed to create a meditative, contemplative space, to quiet the mind, to open the heart to the presence of God. When you listen to Gregorian chant, you are not stimulated or excited. You are calmed, centered, aligned. Your brainwaves shift into alpha and theta states, states associated with deep meditation and spiritual receptivity. This is music that serves the soul, that facilitates transformation, that creates space for the divine to enter. And we can learn from this. We can create modern worship music that embodies these same principles. Music that is simple, pure, intentional. Music that creates space rather than filling it. Music that invites contemplation rather than demanding emotional response. Music that serves the sacred rather than serving the ego. This is the vision I hold for the future of worship. A return to the sacred, a reclamation of spiritual integrity, a conscious choice to honor the power of music and to use it wisely. And this vision is not just for church leaders or professional musicians. This vision is for everyone. Because we all have a voice. We all have the capacity to sing, to create, to participate in the sacred act of worship. And when we do so, with awareness, with intention, with discernment, we become part of the solution. We become agents of transformation. We become co-creators with the divine, helping to birth a new paradigm of worship that truly honors the sacred. Let me also address the role of silence in worship, because this is something that has been largely lost in the modern church. In ancient times, silence was considered one of the most powerful forms of worship. It was in silence that the prophets heard the voice of God. It was in silence that the mystics encountered the divine presence. It was in silence that the soul was purified and aligned. But today, we are afraid of silence. We fill every moment with sound, with music, with words. We are uncomfortable with the emptiness, with the stillness, with the space where we might have to confront ourselves, our shadows, our unresolved pain. And so, our worship becomes a form of spiritual noise, a way of avoiding the deeper work, the inner journey, the confrontation with truth. But true worship requires silence. It requires the willingness to stop, to listen, to wait. It requires the courage to enter the void, the emptiness, the place where all our constructs fall away and we are left naked before the divine. And when we do this, when we embrace silence as a sacred practice, we discover something profound. We discover that the presence of God is not found in the noise, but in the stillness. We discover that the voice of the Spirit is not loud and dramatic, but quiet and subtle. We discover that transformation happens not through emotional highs, but through deep, sustained presence. So I invite you to incorporate silence into your worship practice, whether you are in a church service or in your private devotions. Create space for silence. Turn off the music. Stop the words. Just be. Just breathe. Just listen. And in that silence, you may hear what you have been missing. You may sense what has been obscured by all the noise. You may encounter the divine in a way that is more real, more profound, more transformative than anything you have experienced through music alone. Now, as we come toward the close of this message, I want to leave you with a practice, a simple practice that can help you cultivate discernment in your worship life. The next time you are in a worship service, or listening to Christian music, or singing a hymn, I want you to pause, take a breath, close your eyes, and ask yourself, what am I feeling right now? Not just emotionally, but energetically, spiritually. What is this music doing to me? And then ask the Holy Spirit to show you the truth. Ask for clarity. Ask for discernment. And then listen, not with your ears, but with your spirit. You may be surprised by what you sense. You may feel peace, confirmation, a sense of rightness. Or you may feel discomfort, resistance, a sense that something is off. Either way, honor what you sense. Trust your inner witness. And if you sense that something is not right, do not be afraid to step away. Do not be afraid to stop singing. Do not be afraid to leave the service if necessary. Your spiritual integrity is more important than social conformity. And if others question you, if they ask why you are not participating, you do not owe them an explanation. You can simply say, I am honoring my discernment, and leave it at that. Because this is your journey, this is your relationship with God, and no one else can walk it for you. Now I promised you a question, and here it is. I want you to think about a time when you felt uncomfortable singing a particular song in church. What was the song? What did you feel? And what did you do with that feeling? Did you honor it, or did you dismiss it? I want you to share your answer in the comments, because your story matters. Your experience is valuable, and there are others who need to hear it, who need to know they are not alone in their discernment. And if you have never had this experience, if you have always felt comfortable with the music in your church, I want you to ask yourself, am I truly discerning, or am I just going along with the flow? There is no judgment in this question. It is simply an invitation to greater awareness. And finally, I want to invite you to share this message, not because I need the views, but because this is information that needs to be heard. There are people in your life who are struggling with this very issue. There are people who have felt the discomfort, but did not know how to name it, how to understand it. This message can be a gift to them. It can be a key that unlocks a door they did not know was closed. It can be a light that illuminates a path they have been searching for. So if this has resonated with you, if you have found value in what I have shared, please share it. Send it to a friend. Post it on your social media. Let it reach those who need to hear it, because we are living in a time when discernment is more important than ever. We are living in a time when the lines between light and shadow are increasingly blurred. We are living in a time when we must be vigilant, awake, and intentional about what we allow into our consciousness. And music is one of the primary gateways. It is one of the most powerful tools of influence, for good or for ill, and we must learn to use it wisely, to choose it carefully, to honor its power. So, as I close, I want to leave you with a blessing. May you be granted the gift of discernment. May your spiritual senses be sharpened. May you be able to distinguish between what is truly sacred and what is merely labeled as such. May you have the courage to honor your inner witness, even when it goes against the crowd. May you have the wisdom to choose music that truly serves your soul. And may you experience worship that is not just emotional, but transformational, not just entertaining, but elevating, not just loud, but profound. May you know the presence of God in the silence as much as in the sound. May you find the sacred in the simple, the holy in the humble, and may you walk this path with grace, with strength, with clarity. And remember, you are not alone. There are many of us who are on this journey, who are asking these questions, who are seeking a deeper, truer way. And together, we are creating a new paradigm of worship, a return to the sacred, a reclamation of spiritual integrity. So go forth with confidence, trust your discernment, honor your spirit, and know that every choice you make to align with truth is a victory, not just for you, but for all of us. This is the path, this is the way, and it is available to anyone who has the courage to walk it. May you be blessed, may you be guided, may you be protected, and may you always, always choose the light. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for caring enough about your spiritual life to invest this time in understanding, in questioning, in growing. And now, I leave you with this final thought. The devil wrote it, Christians sing it, but it does not have to be this way. We can write new songs, we can sing new melodies, we can create worship that is truly worthy of the divine. And it starts with you. It starts with your choice. It starts with your willingness to see, to discern, to honor the sacred. So make that choice today. Make it now. And watch as your spiritual life transforms, as your worship deepens, as your connection to the divine becomes clearer, stronger, more real. This is my prayer for you. This is my hope for you. This is my vision for what is possible when we choose truth over tradition, when we choose discernment over conformity, when we choose the sacred over the spectacular. Go in peace. Go in power. Go in the light of truth. And may your song be one that truly honors the divine, that truly serves the light, that truly transforms the world. Amen.